Okay, can anybody? I know you can hear me now. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Gosia Janczarska, and this is my colleague Szymon Brandys. We are Orion committers. We work in IBM in Kraków, Poland. And we will tell you something about Orion integrations. So the first principle when we are building Orion was that we don't want to create an IDE in the browser. The idea was to create an integration platform, just to enable integrating the existing services that already exist on the web, and then enable integrating services that we don't even yet know about it. So how can you integrate with Orion? Orion is bookmarkable, so you can link it from your application. Orion delivers frameworks. Now, we really wanted Orion to be extendable this way. And also, Orion is pluggable. It enables plugins, although those are not the plugins you know from the Eclipse world. Okay, so what does it mean Orion is bookmarkable? Every page in Orion has a unique address, and every resource that is opened in Orion has a unique ID. So the page in Orion, the page URL is usually you combine address of the Orion page and a resource that it opens. So from your application, you can link to it. Like, for instance, you can link to an exact file in the Orion editor, or you can bookmark the page if you want, and you can go back later to the same folder you are browsing. And I will show you how this was used in integrating with GitHub. I suppose most of you know GitHub. This is a GitHub page, but I don't know if you noticed it. This is actually a screenshot from GitHub from one of my repositories, but it's a little bit different than what you usually know. It's this button. Of course, this button is not provided by GitHub itself. We used GreaseMonkey. It's a script that you can plug into your browser, and anytime you go to GitHub, it adds a button. And when you click it, it redirects you to Orion. You can see this is the Orion repositories page. And what is more, everything is set up just to start cloning the repository you actually clicked on. So this has the unique address that is parsed and displays this kind of a page. So in other applications, you can use this mechanism to integrate. Okay, the other feature I was telling you about, Orion delivers frameworks. So we use require.js that makes dependencies trackable. Some of Orion features were meant to be easily extendable and taken out from Orion, so you can use it outside of the Orion. And of course, the components of Orion usually have the value of its own. So you can actually use only the editor, and you won't be really needing the navigator. So one of the examples of the Orion framework is the editor. Actually, I was even surprised during some sessions on this EclipseCon that there are so many adoptions of Orion editor I even didn't know about. So I would like to show you only one of them. This was actually one of the first adoptions of Orion editor. And this is Firefox Scratchpad. So actually, if you go to Firefox, open a Scratchpad, this is our editor. It was just taken out from Orion and put in there, so pretty big. Okay, The one thing I was telling you about is that Orion supports plugins, but they are different from what we know from the Eclipse world. Orion plugins are mainly hosted on web. They are distributed. You can host the Orion plugin on your server, and they are plugged in not to the Orion server itself, but to the Orion client. We are here using all the help from HTML5 we can get to make them visible only for the user that actually installed them. And it doesn't make any changes to the Orion, and other users don't see them. So you can safely import plugins as you like. And because the plugins actually live on a remote servers, you can, for instance, connect to a remote server without violating the single origin policy. So what can you plug into Orion? I think this is not even all. This shows some of the extension points you can see, like shell commands, links. You can plug in a file system. You can plug in some related commands, even language packs. Our editor is also extendable. Actually, there was a workshop about Orion plugins. You can download resources from it, and you will see examples of all the Orion extension points you can implement. So I will show you just a few examples of the integrations we did with plugins. So does any of you know Code Mirror? Yeah, this is generally an online code highlighter people usually use on blogs or online tutorials. Now, it takes a plain text and just colors it. And it lives on the web. It's the service we already know. So our friend created a plugin. And I will show you how does this work. This is a PHP code. Orion doesn't, by default, provide PHP development tools, so it's just a plain text. And you will see, we will install the remote Code Mirror plugin. This is the way how you install plugins. You go to the setting page, and you input the address. You can see it's not local, it's somewhere on the web. And the plugin is installed here on the bottom. And then, please, this is the colored PHP. And of course, closure, why not? Groovy. SQL. And on the bottom, you can see the list of languages this plugin supports. We actually got it for free. No, it's served by the Code Mirror, not us. So it's pretty easy, and you can extend Orion to whatever you like. OK, does any of you know this site, Pixlr? This provides online editing of the graphics, now just basic edit stuff. And Orion doesn't provide by default any editing of the graphics, but we decided just to integrate with the Pixlr itself. So let me show you how this works. I have the Pixlr plugin already plugged in. I select the graphics I want to edit. OK, the plugin added a function here. It's Pixlr image editor. I click it, and this is what Orion provided, the header here. And this is an iframe. This is directly a Pixlr. You can see I am just editing the graphics now with adding some extra stuff to it. Just a pencil. Nothing very fancy. OK. This is done online on the remote service. And I save it. And here we extend it pixelar. We can save it to Orion. And we're back in Orion. We can open it, the graphics. This time we open it raw, so just the graphics. OK, and here it is. So we easily integrated with the service that already existed. One last example I'd like to show you is that I told you Orion, yes? Actually, I don't know. I didn't write it, but I think Pixelar just allows you to plug in something. There, yes, know it. This. OK, and we know that Orion provides an API to save changes remotely. So I can answer, unfortunately, only the questions from Orion. Most of those extensions I showed you are not written by me, are not written by the Orion team. Some of them I just downloaded from the web, And I told you you can plug in the file system. This is a little bit more complicated. You have to implement an API with some basic functions for editing files. This is a JavaScript API. But if you do, you can plug in any file system you want. And here is an example of Amazon S3. That actually here you can see Orion with a navigator open up. And this is directly connected to Amazon S3. If you edit a file in Orion, if you save it, it's saved on the S3 disk. The other extensions of file systems plugins I know about are WebDAV and also HTML5 local file system. So you can actually plug in your local machine and edit it with Orion. You don't copy your files to Orion. It is done directly on your file system. And coming soon, Google Drive, right when you come back to Krakow, we are having a hackathon together with the Google guys. And we are hoping people will write this kind of a plugin for Google Drive. We checked, it's for sure possible. So let's hope it will be good. OK. Over to you. Szymon will show you something more sophisticated.
OK, so hi. I will show you another kind of integration, which is integration with another SCM.git. So. Because I'm Orion committer, but in the same time I work for IBM, so it's probably not a surprise that it will be a connection with Jazz. So for those do you know Jazz or not? No. So Jazz is an IBM initiative to make the improving the collaboration process and working on software and services. And one of Jazz products is something called Rational Team Concert, and this is a product that allows to track tasks, host your source code, manage your source code, provide continuous build integration, things like that. And this integration will be about integrating with it. So, okay, so this is the Git repositories page that we have in Orion. So I hope that some of you already have seen this page. What I'm trying to do, what I've been trying to do for some time already, is I'm trying to provide the same kind of web experience that we have, or Git users have in Orion, so they can develop their code without leaving the browser, and they have everything in place. So I'm trying to. I hope to provide the same kind of experience for people using Jazz, and of course, Jazz repository can be installed anywhere, so you can download it and have it locally. But there is, of course, repository on jazz.net, and there is a sample repository called Sandbox, and my example and demo later will be using this Jazz Sandbox on jazz.net. So the way how a regular Jazz developer works is not very different from a Git user. So he just have a project somewhere on this repository. In this case, on jazz.net. So before my integration, he had to download Eclipse SDK with Jazz client to his desktop or her desktop and create a local copy of workspace, work with it, make changes, create a change set, and push it back to the jazz.net or another Jazz repository. So that's the story. And as you can see, if you go to this sandbox page, okay, so it's more or less described there. So you have details about repository, and the instruction is you need to download Eclipse SDK. So that's probably fine for Java developers who, I guess Eclipse SDK is still the best solution for them. But if you are a JavaScript developer or web developer, I guess that it would be nice to have everything in the browser. So this is about it. So architecture is simple. So we have jazz.net with the server. So on the server we have SCM, we have tasks, management, and those builds, etc. We have something, so I created Jazz connector because, as I said, we need to create this local workspace. So the user has to create this local workspace. So in my example, I have Jazz connector on my local host, but it can be anywhere in the net. So it supports multi-users. So this one Jazz connector can be used by many users. And Jazz connector just provides the space for workspace, and orioneclipse.org will be used for tooling. So I will use orioneclipse.org for developing code from jazz.net. And how I will use GreaseMonkey script in a similar way as Gosia showed before. I will use Orion plugin for providing Filesystem, and I will use something called OSLC delegated UI, which is a way to use UI in my application from other remote sites. So this is, more or less things that I will use in the example. So now I will show you the demo. So it's recorded. And I will start explaining what's going on. So. Okay, so let's start from the page that I showed you at the beginning. So you may see that it's similarly to GitHub page, it's enhanced with this part here. So my GreaseMonkey script that is provided by the Jazz connector installs or adds this thing to the page. So you can just click the link and start working with Orion. So. Okay, so this is what's happening right now. Okay, so okay. So what's going on right now is I started from jazz.net. I was moved to my local host Jazz connector, and the repository was. So I connected to the repository from my local host Jazz connector, and I connected to the project areas. So these are some Jazz concepts, but the important thing is that I have my repository workspace at the bottom. So let's go. So now I can work with my RTC connector on localhost. So I can load the workspace, I can go to changes. So it's an equivalent of Git status page. I can see whether there are some changes coming, incoming, whatever. and there's nothing. So what I'm trying to do next is I go to jazz.net to create a work item to track a change. So again, I go back to jazz.net. I go to my project space. I create a work item to track the progress. Okay, I call it do something, save. And I have my task, right? So the next thing is I go to orioneclipse.org now, right? And I will use it to make a real change in my repository workspace. And the way how they talk to each other, I mean orioneclipse.org to my Jazz connector or localhost is via Filesystem plugin. So, okay, so I open orioneclipse.org. The second place is my Jazz connector Filesystem. I go to the workspace, open a change, open a file, do some change, save. Go back to workspace changes, and now when I refresh my workspace, I will see that something is modified. Okay, so I can open a compare view, see what was changed, and now this is the regular Jazz workflow. So I will check in. Okay, I have to create a change set and then assign it to the work item that I created previously on jazz.net. So that's another step. I create a change set. So the UI is refreshed. There is an outgoing change set. I can see it on jazz.net. And now I'm associating it with, I'm associating it with a work item from jazz.net. And this UI that you can see here in the dialog is also C-delegated UI. So the way how it works is I just open this canvas, and the UI for selecting a work item is provided by jazz.net. So I am on localhost, and there is piece of UI provided by jazz.net. I'm looking for my task. Okay. Now when it's associated with the work item, I can deliver it to the stream. So, okay, so I'm just showing that I can open this work item on jazz.net. So everything is linked, you know, I can, okay, so the most, from my perspective, the most interesting thing that, you know, shows one of things that we are trying to achieve in Orion is you have a task, a developer task for making a change in a repository on jazz.net. And you do this change working with 3 different sites or 3 different services on in different domains, and they are all connected seamlessly. And you really don't see that that if I remove the address bar, you will not recognize that I'm switching between sites, domains. So okay, so I think that's it. So do we have something else?
Oh, good.
Okay, so I think that we have the last slide, which, oh yes, questions. So do you have any questions about the stuff that we showed you? Okay, so you can always grab me or Gosha or anyone from the Orion team somewhere here. So if you have more questions after the session, so please come and ask.
And if you want to know something more about Orion from the developer's perspective, I am having a talk, Orion Mini Frameworks, after the afternoon break today. So,
right.
See you there.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you for coming.